All right, hello everyone. Thank you for joining in today's session. My name is Tony DiGennaro. I am the Mac Workstation Administrator for Nemours Children's Health. Nemours Children's Health is a children's hospital based out of Jacksonville, Florida, and there's also another big hospital in Wilmington, Delaware area, and a few other smaller locations throughout the Florida area. I've been there for 14 months, and we're going to go over the story of my first Jamf admin position. This is not a how-to. This is more of a story of how I managed my Jamf environment from taking it over from a current state to transforming it into something that was going to be acceptable for the organization as well as myself as an IT professional. So, as a first-time Jamf administrator, we're going to go through a couple different bullet points. I'll go through a brief introduction, a section on how to prepare, what you should expect when taking over that position, tools needed for success, and the tools that I used and became very successful with, the aggressiveness, how aggressive should you be with your environment and end users, and a few goals that you should set. So the introduction, how it all begun. It was my second IT job. I was a little over a year into graduating from IT school, and I accepted a systems administration position for a private all-boys Catholic school in downtown Pittsburgh. So I was a Windows guy. I went to school for all Windows servers, and went into systems admin. And first day, he has boxes of parts for me from Newegg, and basically had me build out like a gaming system. Full i7, liquid cooler with the radiator, overclock. I had a nice workstation. So about Friday of my first week, he goes, "So what do you know about Apple?" I said, "Nothing. I've never had an iPhone, iPad, never touched a Mac in school ever." He goes, "Well, here's your iPad." So this was 2013, end of 12, beginning of 13. It's the iPad 4, the first one with the lightning connector. So as I'm setting it up, I'm complaining like every Windows tech about, why does Apple do this? Why does Apple do that? Blah, blah, blah. And he goes, "Well, come with me. I have another project for you." He takes me into the server room, and there's a rack-mounted Apple server sitting in the rack. He said, "I played around with it for a month, and I couldn't get it to work or do anything I wanted it to do. That's your first project." I had never touched Mac ever in my life. So I unmounted that rack server, and I brought it into my office, and I sat it up right next to my desk and hooked up a monitor and keyboard to it, and I started. And I realized really quick that all a Mac server is Mac OS. I think it was Mountain Lion at the time. All it is Mac OS, and there was actually an app in the App Store. I think it was called Mac Server. I'm not even 100% sure. It's been almost 10 years now. So within a week, I had the 15 MacBook laptops we had, and we had the MacBook laptops that were the white plastic classic. Well, within a week, I had them integrated with the Active Directory, and I had the server talking to our AD server, and basically you could log in on a Mac and have items on your desktop, and then go log in on a Windows machine in the library and have all the apps or all the files that you've saved. We had file saving everywhere. So that was my first task, and I was like, woohoo! And then he goes, "Okay, so just so you know, we're in an iPad pilot, and in May, we're going to be getting 400 because for the following school year in September, they were going to deploy 400 to the freshmen and sophomore." And that's how they were going to start their iPad program. And then next year, the freshmen would get another batch before everyone had it. And the plan was for them to keep an iPad for 4 years. So now it was like, well, what are we going to do to manage these? So long or the short is we got Jamf going. Like I said, so about this time, it's probably early 2013. I can't even remember what Jamf looked like then. So long or the short is, I moved on to a different opportunity after we deployed those 400 iPads. But at that point, I was hooked as an Apple guy. I had a personal MacBook at home. All my kids had iPads. They were like 5 or 6 at the time, and me and my wife switched to iPhones. And in my next 8 years as a Windows server admin, I was the go-to Apple guy. Anytime, that one-off designer had a Mac, it was me that was helping them set it up and troubleshoot it and all that kind of fun stuff. Then in 2018, a big insurance company based out of Florida, I got an email in my inbox, a Mac Associate Systems Engineer is what the job title was. So I went ahead and took it. And and took the full headfirst dive into the Windows world, into the Mac world. And there was 800 devices on that network, and that is where my learning and desire to become a Mac admin began. I worked there for 2 years. I became very close with the senior systems engineer there, and he ended up, showing me a lot of the ropes and a lot of the way to go. And he actually ended up being a big part in the first month or two that I actually started running the system here at Nemours. So that's a brief introduction of how I started in the Macs. 8 years ago, 10 years ago, took a whole bunch of time off in the middle to do other job opportunities, and circled my way back to what I really wanted to do all this time. So how to prepare, and like I said in my introduction, you need to learn from your current admin. You're probably already in a position, learn from that individual, ask questions. When he says, "Oh, we're going to push out Office update," ask him, what are you doing to do that? How are you pushing that out? How do you see this? How do you see that? When are we going to release the operating? Ask questions. Study on your own time. There's a lot of material out there. All the previous JNUCs are out there on YouTube. There are plenty of resources that you can reach out to for more information, and we'll talk about that a little bit later in the tools section. And the Jamf 100 course. Yes, the Jamf 100 course is for free. There's a link here at the top of the slide, but I'll also have the link in the handout that I will provide with this. And the Jamf 100 course. And I will admit, I have procrastinated on getting my Jamf 100 as well. I've been here 14 months, over a year, and this year I set a goal to get the Jamf 100 and 200 course. So I told myself, once I'm done with the JNUC presentation today, I'm actually going to start going over the course material. Somebody told me that since I've already been an admin for over a year, I should pass that with flying colors. So last week I did take the practice test that they provide you at the end, just the practice test. And I passed the practice test without even taking the course material. But there were a few things of questions that I did get wrong that I honestly didn't know the answer to because I didn't watch the material. So I'm going to go through, watch all that material, and we're going to get our 100 certification hopefully by next week. And as soon as that's done, I will be scheduling the 200 certification. One thing to note is for the Jamf 100, it is $99 to actually take the certification test. So that is something you will have to work out with your organization to get compensated for that. So what to expect? Excuse me. You should assess the current state of Jamf. Go in there, you're new, you don't know the environment, and if you're like, I didn't have a previous Jamf admin to ask, how did you set this up? What did you do here? What did you do? If you assess the current state of Jamf, one of the first things I did is I went in to look at the license, and the license was actually out of date by about 3 months. And my manager had the email in her email box and, never actually went in and applied the license. So, that was one of the things I had to do. I had to go in and assess the current state of Jamf. And when you're going in through that assessment, you need to determine what is good. What is going good? Who's up to date? Who is not getting any errors in the error logs? And you also have to determine when you're doing that, what's the bad? Who's on an operating system 4 years old? Whose machine hasn't checked in 3 months? Why? Then you got to make a plan. And when you make that plan, you need to figure out what you're going to do first. What is the most important bad, I guess you should say, when you assess to the Jamf? In my situation, it was the build. The build was not working. I started my first day. My manager handed me my laptop, and I said, "How do you build it? What's the process here?" And she says, Now, I don't know. I'm not a Mac user. So I turned it on. I saw what happened. Turned it on, and it connected to remote management. I put my username and password, and it went through, and a splash screen popped up. And sure enough, that was called Splash Buddy. And for some reason, Splash Buddy was not finishing. So I reached out to some people on the team that were kind of handling the Mac stuff, and sure enough, he said, "Yeah, we've come across that, and Splash Buddy kind of gets stuck at the installing Office, and we don't know why." So after a little bit of Google, I found a shortcut command, like, for Control Option X, Y, down arrow, and it would kill it and get you to the desktop, and I was able to get in. So I got to make a plan, but you got to make a plan of what you're going to do, and you're going to execute that plan slowly. Now, I did get the imaging to work within the first week, but then you got to look at your operating systems, and so I went ahead and created a dashboard that has a lot of information on it. But the main information that I like to keep on it is I keep all my operating system versions that are installed on my fleet on here. I have, a 66 Big Surs and 58 Monterey's. But then I have all the individual, sub operating systems as well. So as you can see, most of my 58 Monterey's are on 12.2.3, and the same with the 66 Big Surs. 48 of them are on the most up-to-date latest version. I try to use this, and I use this as a tool, so when I release an update, I go to my dashboard and I watch the numbers change. I make a new smart group for the new operating system version, and I like to watch one go down while the other one goes up. Hey, tools needed for success. So I'll go over my bullet points real quick, and then we'll go over a few slides that and explain them a little deeper. Google is your friend. We all like Google. GitHub, Jamf Nation, Slack. These are 3 resources that I use daily to get information that I need, or ask questions, or help others that have asked a question that I have experienced before and found a solution to. Personal friends. Talked about this a little bit earlier with learning from your previous admin. You become friends with them. Utilize the main install, remove, and update workflow. If you've never heard about this, I'll have a link for it in the handout, but I will also go over a brief description of the main install, remove, and update workflow. And Auto Packager. Auto Packager was a lifesaver for me. So Google is your friend. Obviously, if you're in IT and you've been in IT this long, you know that Google is your friend. We are, professional. We are IT professionals, but we are, in our second job, should be professional Googlers. Learn what keywords you need to use. Learn what you need to do. I notice if you put anything in, if you don't put Jamf, you will get a lot of personal Mac recalls, search results. If you put Jamf on the back of anything, Microsoft Auto Update, Jamf, you get a lot of Jamf Nation and Jamf documentation stuff. Documentation is very good. There's a 65% chance, and I'm just making up that number, there's a 65% chance that the issue you are having has been had by somebody else before. Okay, as we spoke earlier, Jamf Nation, then there's Slack, and there's GitHub. Jamf Nation, anytime I have an issue, you can go in here and put into this search, and somebody else, again, has had your problem. A lot of times the Google search won't narrow down a Jamf Nation result. I have had better results actually going to Jamf Nation and searching my issue. And what's cool is as you start typing your issue out, it starts giving you drop downs of all the threads that have been previously opened with those keywords. So it works really good. There's also another app called Slack, and there's the Mac admins channel in there, and there's also plenty of other channels. And I had an issue with my Debt Notify that when the Monterey 3.0 and 3.1 came out, there was a Python script that was in my enrollment package, and it would fail. It wouldn't launch on machines when they were imaging. And I went and reached out on the Slack, and within 10 minutes, somebody had replied to me, and 4 or 5 replies later, I had my issue resolved, and I was back up and running, and it was probably less than 45 minutes total. GitHub. GitHub is where you're going to get a lot of your Mac back-end applications. I get my auto packager there, the dep notify for the building I get there, and I get Nudge there. Nudge is something we'll talk about a little bit later as well. Nudge is a update application that nudges your users to update their operating system. Okay, so here's the first package I get from GitHub. It is called Auto Packager. So Auto Packager is an application that lives on a standalone device. If once you use GitHub a few times, you will know what files and folders and where to go to get all the config files and information you need. And once you get it up and running, you will have it on a server. So in my case, we have a iMac that was being repurposed and didn't have a home. So we set it up in an empty cube at the office, and I have the Auto Packager run on it. So what Auto Packager does is every day at 10 a.m., it runs it runs, and it will download and it will download packages for any application that you run in your environment that you want to have updated on the regular. So for me, I have my core apps in here, my Adobe's, my Citrix, my browsers, and my Office for the most part. Every day at 10 o'clock, it goes and checks out and see if there's any updated packages. If it returns a positive result for an updated package, it downloads that package to the server. The server then logs itself into the Jamf Pro instance and uploads that package. It uploads the icon if it's a new package that you're downloading, and it also updates a policy. You can set it to update your self-service policy so your users can get it right away. I do something a little bit different, and we'll go over that in a couple of slides. So once it is done and it completes its run for the day, you can have it set up to set an alert. I have it go to my Teams channel. We have a Teams channel for Mac OS Jamf that a couple of the techs can log in and the team can go and look. And I have it Auto Packager go there every day. So it will tell you if you have updates or if you had no updates or if there was an error. Errors do happen, and sometimes the packages, the actual packages in the Auto Packager server need updated and the trusts updated and stuff like that. And you can also manually run the auto packages at any time by, simply clicking on it in the console. So once my downloads are downloaded, I have them go to a self-service category called testing. So you can see in this testing, there's half of them are a white dot, but then there's 4 or 5 of them that actually have a green dot. So the green dot is a new update. So I come in here every other Tuesday. That's how I send out my updates to my users. Every other Tuesday, I work on updates. I come into this testing, and anything that is green is a new package that was downloaded by Auto Packager. So I then go to my Citrix workspace, the main policy that I have, and I update the package, and I do everything I need to in testing. Then I turn this dot back off. So once I do my updates, I turn all these and disable all of these policies. When it runs again tomorrow, if it downloads a new update, it'll activate that policy, turn it green, and put the new package in there. So every couple of weeks, it's easy for me to just go in here and see what new packages were downloaded or not. So the install, main, remove, and update. So it might seem counterintuitive to use 4 different policies to update Firefox, but it's brilliant. It utilizes 4 policies and 2 smart groups. The 2 smart groups are Mozilla Firefox is installed and Mozilla Firefox is up to date. So what these policies do is they make your self-service item a smart item. So it will have if it's not installed on the device, it will say install. User hits install, it goes, it runs the install. That button from install will change to remove. If I deploy an update, there will be a secondary button that shows up in self-service that says update, and it all works pretty nifty once you get it set up. And again, there's the link up top on this slide, and it talks about the GitHub, and all you got to do is go up to that link in the session handout, and it'll give you step-by-step instructions on how to create all these smart groups in all 4 of these policies, and then you can apply them to literally any piece of software you want. I do about 10 pieces of software with it this way. So if you look at the main policy is where the current package lives. All that is in this policy is the package. There's no self-service. It's scoped to everybody, and it only has a custom trigger. And the custom trigger, again, following the verbiage from that GitHub link, it tells you to name it main/Mozilla Firefox. So then on the install policy, you scope that self-service icon to all of your users and have it in self-service. But then all you do is run a files and processes, and you put the Jamf policy event main.firefox, main/Firefox, just like the documentation says. So all it's doing is calling to the other policy for the install. For the remove Mozilla Firefox, you only scope it to Mozilla Firefox is installed smart group. So if it's only scoped to it's installed, only the people that have it installed will see the remove Firefox. And all it does is run a script to remove it from the device. And the same thing with the update Mozilla Firefox. That's why you have a smart group for Mozilla Firefox is up to date. If they're up to date, they get excluded. So if they're not excluded when you release an update, they will have an update button. So when an update is ready to come out, I'm sorry, let me backtrack there. So the update is a little bit of the remove and the install converted into one. So in the remove, you have a remove script, but in the update, you also have a remove script, but you also have a files and processes that calls to the Jamf policy to install the new version. When you are going to install a new version, you only have to update 2 different locations. You have to update the smart group of up to date with the new version number. And then you have to add the new package that matches the smart group version number to the main policy. And it really works smooth once you get it all up and running. Okay, there's a few websites that I like to take note of, and they should go right up into your address bar. There's macadmins.software, Apple Business Manager, a couple Wikipedia pages, and an eshops.macsales.com. So macadmins.software. This is where you're going to get all your Microsoft Office downloads. There's a calendar at the top tab that'll show you the release date of all the different items. And the most important part is if you look in the bottom section, there's a CF bundle version. That CF bundle version is what Jamf sees when it sees the version number in the Jamf Pro. So when you're using a smart group, for like in this example, Microsoft Edge, it's not just version 100.11.15, it's 100.1115. A whole bunch of numbers after it. And unless you use the CF bundle version from the macadmins.software, then you won't know what version number you have unless you install it, have it check in, then go and check applications and do it the long way around. Apple Business Manager, this should be where all your devices are. If you're using Jamf, you guys should be using Apple Business Manager. And Apple Business Manager will have is what directs your device to your Jamf enrollment. And 2 Wikipedia pages. I use the 2 because my current environment is Monterey and Big Sur dominant. This tells you all the versions that are out and the dates that they were released. This is and very important for the application I use called Nudge, which we'll talk about in a minute. And every time a new version is released, I have to go and update the script to add the previous version. So you're always having to look and see what versions there are. So this is very resourceful to getting the exact versions that are released. You know, like there isn't a 12.2.2. It just goes to 12.3. So this is very helpful information for every device that was, every operating system version that was released. In the eShopMacSales.com, here is a very good compatibility guide. I'm sure you find a MacBook in the manager's drawer, and you can easily come here and find out what operating system is the latest compatible with that. Okay, aggressiveness. So we use Nudge for OS updates, and we'll go over that last, but we're going to need to learn your environment. You need to learn your environment. You need to find out what your users are. Are they local admins? Are they local users? You need to find out who your frequent flyers are. What users need special access to USB drives or sudo access. You got to take your time. Take your time with the things that you're doing. You want to nudge yourself into that, no pun intended. So I use the Nudge app when I like to update. I give my users 9 to 14 days, so 2 weeks to update, and it gradually increases popping up on them as time goes on. The only bad side with using Nudge is in my environment, I am on a standard user environment, so users can't authenticate. So my update button goes to runs a root command via a self-service policy. On an M1 device, M1 cries an admin password, even if the sudo command is deployed via Jamf policy. So the workaround is a mass action command, which I'm not really a fan of. The mass action command looks like this, and it actually looks like the left icon here, and it's not expanded. And the bad part is to expand it, you need to hit the arrow and to see how many days you have to defer. Because I have it set up where I give my users some time, So I have my smart group for M1s. I hit action at the bottom once I hit view, and I can send out remote commands. I can specify the operating system version, and I can set how many days to defer it. And, in the case of this screenshot, I had it set for 7 days. So you should set a few goals. And these are the goals I set. Have a stable environment. It must be stable. It must not have a lot of error messages every day. Your users have to be able to work. Even if whatever you have to do, your users have to be able to work. Remember, because if you are bringing them down, they're not going to do what the second bullet point says. You want to become the trusted IT person. You want to know when they see your name come across their email or their Teams or whatever you guys use, that they know they're in good hands. And I also made a 100 and 200 certification goal. I think you guys should too if it's your first admin position and you haven't had it yet. I'm going to start my Jamf 100 course here this afternoon, and hopefully by the time you guys watch this, I will have completed the 200 certification. So those are the things that you need to do, and this is what I did in my personal experience. In my first IT job, I took it slow. I reached out to the people I needed to. That trusted admin from my previous position was very, very helpful. We're actually able to get him to do a couple screen shares with me to help get a few of the more complicated things up and running and kind of give me a crash course in the Jamf Pro my first week or two there as well. Study, study, study. Take your tests, take your certifications, and you will be well on your way. So. Well, anyway, I appreciate you guys turning into the JNUC 2022 conference today. Again, my name was Tony DiGennaro, and I hope you enjoyed listening to my story of how I became a Jamf admin and how I managed myself as well as my system for the first time, ever trying to do it. All right, you have a good one and enjoy the rest of the conference.